To own and carry firearms is a fundamental civil right. The Second Amendment is so important because it gives teeth to freedom of religion, speech, press, and peaceful assembly. But, until recently in this country, there were states that denied citizens the right to keep and bear arms. One of the last holdouts was the land of Lincoln, Illinois. Until spring of 2014, Illinois citizens were barred from carrying a firearm outside of the home. The courts changed that. Even with the right to bear arms now secured in law, there are still severe limitations.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the Rotunda, the great state of Illinois. I want you first of all to look up. Look up. Is that gorgeous or what? The Rotunda of the state capitol of the state of Illinois. It's one of a kind. It's the best in the country, and I've seen them all over. Also, before you leave, we did a $50 million reconstruction of this building with your money. Arch skylight. I want you to go up there, and I want you to let the heavenly light through the arch skylight at the top of that 50-foot mural, just let it bathe over you, because you paid for it.
Now I would like to introduce you to Valinda Rowe, and she is going to become our favorite cheerleader today.
Got it. Around us, like Indiana, our neighbor, people could carry a firearm to protect themselves. And we thought, why is this the case in Illinois where we're forbidden from protecting ourselves in a situation like this? We're law-abiding people. You know, it's not like we're criminals. We just need to be able to protect ourselves. I cannot make you safer by preventing you from protecting yourself.
This is our chance to celebrate. This is our victory that we do have a shall issue law with statewide preemption, but we're also here, more importantly, to send the message to our legislators. And that message is that gun-free zones are killing zones. Gun-free zones are killing zones. Gun-free zones are killing zones.
Rewind to the first quarter of 2013. The last 6 months of the past year, the right to keep and bear arms has become a hot political issue.
But there is no place in our state for military-style assault weapons designed for rapid fire at human targets at close range.
I don't see a legitimate sporting or hunting purpose to an assault rifle or to a 100-round clip. I just don't see it.
Does the Second Amendment have anything to do with hunting?
Of course it does, and read the opinion.
In the midst of maddening conversation about which firearms should be banned and which teachers could be armed, for the past 50-plus years, Illinois has been without the right to keep and bear arms.
If somebody drags me into an alley with the intention to do ill will, I am supposed to stick a tongue depressor down my throat and throw up on them. And that made me want to throw up. I could not believe that was the Illinois State Police's recommendation and that's what they would tell their daughters to do. So that's my introduction into firearms.
Illinois is the last state to allow for operable firearms to be carried in public by law-abiding citizens.
The Seventh Circuit said an absolute ban, which is what Illinois has, in their opinion, is unconstitutional.
And provided for a deadline.
And let's be clear on this. I don't think a lot of people understand this. After 180 days, constitutional carry will set in. I think 4 other states in this country has constitutional carry. That means if you have a valid Ford card in this state, you can carry pretty much anything you want, wherever you want.
This is the story of Illinois getting the right to bear arms.
In about 2004, I found online this website called Illinois Carry that had been established by a gentleman in central Illinois that felt the same way we did, because when we first got into this, my husband and I thought maybe we were the only ones that thinking that Illinois didn't have a carry law. Maybe we're the only ones that are upset about this. But we found Illinois carry and discovered that there were several people that thought this should change. And 2004 is also when Missouri passed their carry law. So a group of us from Illinois carry thought, well, you know, they were very successful at doing this. Rather than reinventing the wheel, let's go talk to the groups that help get this done and see how they did it. You know, maybe we can learn something. So we drove over to St. Louis one evening and met with them. And they told us 3 things. They said, 1, it has to be a grassroots effort. A group from outside cannot come in and affect this change in your state, because legislators don't listen to people who don't vote for them. It's got to be grassroots going to their legislators and demanding that a law be changed. 2, you need to get women involved, because in every state that passed concealed carry, when legislators who had previously been against concealed carry were asked, what changed your mind? Why did you change your vote in support of this? And they said, well, when the women in our districts started approaching us and telling us that they wanted the right to be able to protect ourselves, it was a whole lot harder to look them in the eye and say, no, you don't need the right to be able to protect yourself. It changed their mindset. They began to realize the need. And the 3rd thing they said is, it's probably going to take you about 10 years, so you better get started now. And that was in 2004. And in 2014, I now have a concealed carry license. So we fought this battle on 3 fronts. The legislative front, and that is getting people to contact their legislators and convincing them that we need to change the law. We fought it on the judicial front, where we would bring legal cases forward in the court to force the hand. And 3rd, we fought it on the electoral front in encouraging people to vote for candidates that supported their right to carry. Not necessarily candidates who said, I support the Second Amendment, but push them to the point and say, I understand you support the Second Amendment. What I'm asking you is, do you support my right as a legal citizen to carry a firearm on my person to protect myself and my family? That was the key question. And I think it was those 3 things coming together is what made the difference. It was the judicial front that forced their hand and said, you must provide some legal means for people to carry. And one of the individuals that I had asked to be one of our speakers said, there's going to be a lady there. I'm pretty sure she's going to attend. I would love for you to meet. Her name's Mary Shepard, and she's been taking, our classes, and she's just a wonderful person. Would like for you to meet her.
Well, I had taken about 5 classes inside the home, outside the home, and what have you, before all this happened.
Here was this little fireball, her eyes just sparkled, and she was all excited about firearms training. She'd gotten a concealed carry license that she could carry when she was out of state, and what are we going to do to get this done in Illinois? Is there anything I can do to help?
And I was on my soapbox the whole time until September 29th of 2009. I was at work in the First Baptist Church of Anna when I was assaulted. And so I said, well, I think I'll go in my room, my office, and run the trial balance because it's the end of the month, and then I'll go home. And that was about 10 till 3. And the next thing I knew, I woke up on the floor in my office. I got up, and the first thing I did was look, and I thought, how did everything in my purse get on the floor? And I, not realizing I had blood all over me, I picked up everything, stuck it back in my purse, and then, as my usual habit, 4 o'clock every day when I get ready to leave, I go to the washroom. Walking down the hall, not knowing that anything was going on, not knowing that I was dragging my hand down the side of the wall covered in blood, and I got to this one classroom, and there's this lady sitting in there, and she's, her back's towards me. Then I thought, I don't know that lady, I better go get past her. So I turned around and I walked back to the main part of the office and passed out in the visitors' chairs. And that's when Pastor Tony came out and found me. The medical team was there, the police were there, the sheriff was there, and I was on the way to the hospital. I don't remember the actual meeting. I don't know anything about that part, just from what I've been told, that's happened. He's in jail for 24 years. Because of this. Was in and out of that church 24/7. And it never occurred to me that I figured I was safer there than any place in that building. Later, when we heard the news that 2 women had been attacked in their church, I thought, and Anna, we didn't know it was Mary. I just, your heart just goes out in compassion for these 2 ladies that were attacked, and it just strengthens your resolve in that we need the right to be able to protect ourselves in this state. Then a few hours later, we found out it was our friend Mary. And that lit a fire in me like you cannot believe. To think that she had 2 concealed carry licenses in her purse that day, but no firearm because she lived in the state of Illinois was just outrageous. It was outrageous. And I thought, this is the kind of stuff that has to stop. And then there was the opportunity to find legal counsel and possibly go forward with a lawsuit for Mary's right to be able to protect herself. People were skeptical about where this was going to go. And clear up to when we got the ruling, because you just never know in the Illinois, we are a different bird here. So I got to thinking about this probably in '68, I guess, is when they started really infringing on with the Floyd Act and so forth. So we've gone nearly 50 years of a negative viewpoint of gun ownership in the state of Illinois, and even in Chicago, 2 whole decades or more where they couldn't even own a handgun. So we had a lot to overcome as far as mindset and perception of owning guns, let alone carrying one on your person for personal protection.
Ladies and gentlemen, Otis McDonald.
He's the father of the Second Amendment in the state of Illinois. A wonderful man. And his part in all of this is that the court could never have ruled in Mary's favor if Otis McDonald hadn't first brought the Second Amendment into the state of Illinois. Dick Heller sued Washington, D.C. because it banned his right to own a handgun in his home. And he won. But it only affected Washington, D.C. because it was the District of Columbia. It wasn't a state. So when Otis McDonald, who lived in Chicago and could not own a handgun in his own home to protect himself with because of this ban in Chicago, he went forward and a lawsuit was placed on his behalf. He won. It went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Thank you all, each and every one of you that have supported this venture.
Thank you.
We have needed it. The journey wasn't so long, but it was a hard one.
And when he won, that incorporated the Second Amendment right to keep and own a firearm in your home to the state of Illinois and all the states. So from history on, from that point on, anytime you talk about the Second Amendment, Mr. Otis McDonald's name will be mentioned in that, McDonald versus Chicago.
I want to say to all the people in here, I thank you again. I love you from my heart. I feel that you all have supported me, have given me the strength to do what I have done. Never did I have a dream or even a thought of a dream to have done what I have done, or done what people have joined with me and lift me up through things I never knew where I was going half of the time. But they were there supporting me, and I was just walking along. And they just had me going. And I thank all of you.
that was kind of like a building a platform, a pyramid up to the right to carry. Once the Second Amendment was right to own in your own home was incorporated into the state, then we could come back with Mary's case and say, okay, owning it in our own home is not enough. We have a constitutional right to carry that with us when we leave our home. And based on that platform of McDonald versus Chicago, then the Seventh Circuit came back and ruled in Mary's favor that she did have a right to carry a firearm outside her home.
Well, what they did in this case was say that the fact that Illinois has no version of a carry law in their mind is unconstitutional.
And the way I view it, and the way I view it personally, and the way I view it professionally as the elected representative for the 50th Legislative District, is that Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals decision seemed to be very specific that it shouldn't, in the way I read it, again, I'm not an attorney, let alone a judge, but the way I interpret it, they said, Illinois, you've been doing this wrong for quite some time, and you need to correct it.
And I think this case highlighted and went through the importance of in self-defense, and say that the reason we have the Second Amendment and the reason that they say that there needs to be some sort of carry law is for the purpose of self-defense. And it also points out that we're the only state in our country that does not have some form of concealed carry or carry.
I mean, you can walk around inside your house or I presume business with it. I'm not an attorney, but you are correct. Once you walk out your front door, you pretty much can't carry it anywhere.
Illinois has no version of a carry law in their mind is unconstitutional, but they stayed that mandate, and that's very important in this case because it is not law yet. They said we're going to wait 180 days. And the reason it appears, it's purposely to give the state legislature time to craft a law for concealed carry. And the case goes into lengths to give direction to the legislature. And now the legislature needs to give direction to the public and to law-abiding citizens who want to carry guns in Illinois and enact some form of carry law with reasonable limitations, and the case talks about that. That are consistent with the protection of the public and also consistent with the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution.
The Shepard decision was handed down in December of 2012. Illinois lawmakers were then tasked to come up with some kind of carry law, but not without a fair amount of rhetoric, hyperbole, headaches, and bureaucrats diverging from the real issues of the right of citizens to keep and bear arms.
Is this one of these pro-gun guys who's already testified that they're not going to give up their guns no matter what laws you passed? What if we were a state where we allowed people to carry guns in public? What if there were 50 or 100 or 150 people sitting around that room, and what if some of them saw that gun and decided, now's my chance to be that hero I've always fantasized myself to be? What if one of those people stood up and people could see that person's gun? And what if another police officer across the room realized that that person was not a police officer? And what if that person pulled out a gun? And what if everyone else started pulling out all their guns? And what if a chair fell over and made a loud noise, or someone yelled out, "Gun"? How many people might have been hurt seriously in that ambiguous situation?
And you made a comment about the people who won't give their guns back or who will carry no matter what. Those people are called gangbangers. They're going to carry with a FOID card, without a FOID card. It doesn't matter.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's no demonstrations from the audience, please.
I'm referring to the people who stood up at this meeting, identified themselves as members of the National Rifle Association or Illinois Carry or the State Rifle Association, and said that they have a God-given right, not just a constitutional right, to defend themselves by whatever means to carry guns, and that even if this body put in regulations, that they would, as a philosophical matter, insist on the right to carry guns. We're not just talking about gangbangers, who are one segment. We're talking about people who have a philosophical notion that they are above whatever laws you put in place.
When I was a little kid, I had an older brother, and we watched American Sportsman. It was a wonderfully done television show I never forgot.
Presents
was guys that liked their chosen sport, whether it was catching a big fish or shooting a goose or a moose or a bear. They showed it, and I thought it was wonderfully well done. So I guess I got the sportsman's bug early on. I just liked shooting.
Tom liked shooting so much, he made an educational public access TV series called The Shooting Sport that aired in and around Springfield. He used that as a platform to educate, but also comment on gun rights and politics.
There's the hunting sportsman, and then there's the collecting sportsman that just likes to shoot. And I put myself in that second category. I just wanted to learn to shoot a different range of firearms from the easiest to the most difficult. And I taught myself over the years. I read probably 1,000 textbooks, all the sporting arms, all the manual of arms, all the safety books, all the NRA publications. I just wanted to be a well-rounded, safe shooter. This is the smart way when you get to be businesslike and professional. You don't worry about theft. You don't worry about unauthorized access. You have a safe. It keeps all of your stuff safe. Now I put my binoculars in there. I put my expensive camera equipment in there, but mostly it's for my firearms collection. And this keeps all the unauthorized hands out of it. I keep the keys in my pocket. It's got over a 1/4-inch thick steel door. It's expensive, but this is the way a professional keeps his gun collection. Unlike some of my buddies who've been cleaned out by the home burglars, I've never suffered a theft in my firearms collection because early on in my collecting career, I bought a gun vault.
Tom lives in the capital city, where the General Assembly has been tasked to come up with a carry law with, quote, reasonable limitations. The state is under a deadline to give Illinoisans the right to carry without fear of prosecution. Instead, the legislature wants to talk about laws to report lost or stolen guns to police.
Law enforcement in the city of Chicago has said, putting aside the merits of carry, they've talked about things they can do to prevent crime. And one of the things they've suggested is a lost and stolen provision that prevents straw purchasers from buying guns, and then those guns end up in circulation. Can you explain why you guys would be opposed to a bill like that, or part of that is the negotiated agreement?
Yeah, because we went to court and we won. And the carry issue is separate from all the other issues. If every year we have a debate about guns in the General Assembly, more so in the House than we do in the Senate. And with that, there have been lost or stolen bills brought to the floor. There have been semi-auto bans. There have been a number of other things. This issue is about a court decision.
You don't feel as though lost and stolen, which would likely garner you some votes from folks that had previously been opposed to House Bill 148. You don't think that should be part of this?
No, it's a separate issue. If there's going to be another set of bills that want to be negotiated out or talked about, those are separate issues. And let's not forget that the bill the city of Chicago wants isn't just about lost or stolen. It's about every firearm transferred in the state to create a statewide registry of every firearm sold.
Again, I'm going to be leaning towards the most, the most liberal policy possible when it comes to the right to keep and bear arms.
I believe in constitutional carry. I believe you should be able to carry, open, concealed, or otherwise. The Second Amendment is my permit. It is your permit.
Media has now picked up on a gun ban siege type mentality after a bunch of dreadful incidents by lunatics who accessed firearms and used them illegally.
Guns are not evil. They're inanimate objects. They can only perpetrate an evil act if an evil person or someone who's disturbed chooses to use them incorrectly. They can be used for plenty of good as well.
They've now put in a call for a semi-auto ban, which is actually not an assault weapon ban, but a semi-auto ban, which encompasses about 9/10 of my gun collection. They're back on a handgun ban. I noticed they've gotten off of handguns, and now they're on to high-capacity magazines and what they call assault weapons. That media-driven siege by our government will have at least 10,000 people out. They're rural people, blue-collar people, gun owners, shooting enthusiasts, people who've lobbied before on concealed carry. They're going to try to come out to Springfield on the 6th of March, and they're going to march to the Capitol and talk to their lawmakers again about that now we're the last state without concealed carry, and that the courts have weighed in on concealed carry, so that the issue, I've never seen it as red hot as it's ever been in the last 2 months. My phone's rang nonstop for the last 2 months. If they're not involved now, in the pro-gun struggle. They'll never be, but I look on iGold to be a huge success.
And it was a huge success. Despite a brutal winter storm slamming the northern part of the state, an estimated 7,000 to 8,000 people turned out for the 2013 Illinois Gun Owners Lobby Day.
Hello, gun lobby!
To lobby their lawmakers for the ability to carry firearms.
If the leadership from Chicago doesn't want to give us a clean bill, a vote on a clean bill, then it's very simple. We're going to vote no. We're going to ask our downstate Democratic representatives to vote no. We're going to ask our Republican friends to vote no, and we'll kill a bad bill. And then we'll see how they like a court-ordered constitutional carry scheme.
Why do you think the city of Chicago is so strident in opposition to the bill, or at least the proposal?
I think because you have a mentality within the elected class of the city of Chicago, from Mayor Daley to the current administration, that they don't like guns, period.
Why?
I think they blame the gun for all the problems that they can't get their hands around. They have a violence rate they can't control. They have an educational system that's failing that they can't fix. They have jobs fleeing the city with industry that they can't stem. The bleeding on that. And so I think at the end of the day, the simplest thing for them to do is to find a boogeyman. It may be the gun, it may be the NRA, and make us the patsy. Because they have failing policies that they can't get a grip on. And it's easier to try to point the finger and blame somebody else than it is to sit there and fix those problems, because they're complex problems. All you have to remember when you go to the Capitol today, two simple things. No bad bill, no compromise. You keep doing that, that's the message you call to your legislators every day. You tell them when you see them face-to-face today. You call their office and remind them tomorrow. You call them the day after that. When they're back in the districts on the weekends and you see them in the coffee shop, you remind them of that. And you say, if you don't like this, we told you 2 years ago. Brandon Phelps said it on the floor. You don't like this bill? We're going to court. When we come back and win, you ain't going to like the next one. Well, we already see they don't like this one. Maybe the Attorney General would like to appeal this to the United States Supreme Court. Because yesterday, her and the Cook County State's Attorney's Office filed a brief with the Illinois Supreme Court saying essentially that the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals opinion on right to carry is advisory in nature, and the Illinois Supreme Court is not obligated to follow it. Wow. I didn't know that the little princess that is the Cook County State's Attorney's Office trumped 3 federal judges. But then again, I never thought Chicago and Cook County were the capital of Illinois either.
Ever since I've been sheriff for 19 years, I have supported concealed carry. It was about that time in the early 90s that these laws started gaining momentum throughout the country. It's been shown that in states that have passed this, it's lowered the crime rate. As good a job as police officers do throughout the state, they can't be everywhere. We're mainly reactive, and it's almost embarrassing to the fact that Illinois is, well, practically the last state to even consider it.
It seems commonsensical to say that then only evildoers, only people who are looking to perpetrate crimes, then are armed, because they, of course, don't worry about the laws. They don't worry about fair play. As a matter of fact, I think most criminals are looking for an upper hand, whether it's to commit a petty crime, they're looking for an empty home or office. If it's to commit mass murder, they typically go to these gun-free zones. And that, in turn, creates the perfect opportunity. I mean, motive and opportunity are the two components of to commit the crime. And we create the perfect breeding ground, or the perfect opportunity for these mass murderers to commit these crimes against humanity.
So now other states have tried to figure out ways to keep them out of their hands with waiting periods and background checks. Now in Illinois, we have the FOID card. That was passed in '68, and I've had it since 1971 when I got my first FOID card.
The FOID card is a firearm owner's identification card. It's required by the state of Illinois to purchase guns, ammunition, to be in possession of any of the above. It's an extra identification by the state issued by the Illinois State Police. Generally takes you about a month and a half to get back from them. Once you've issued the application to them, you're required to send a picture. It is a photo ID, and pretty much it allows you to handle, purchase, or be in possession of anything firearm related. As far as having any severe mental illnesses, those are some of the questions that they ask you. If you are an illegal alien and obviously not supposed to be in this country, that can stop you from receiving a FOID card.
And for years, Richard, Don, and I had been fielding phone calls and emails about people not being able to get their FOID cards.
It was promised to keep guns out of the wrong hands. Of course, it's never worked. The people that want firearms to further their criminal career get all kinds of firearms. Usually they get junk, sawed off, secondhand, rusty, half working, but some of them that have money from dope dealing, they can buy sophisticated firearms.
We didn't ask for the FOID system. It was foisted upon us in 1967 and 1968. And if the government wants to mandate that I have to have a license in my pocket in order to exercise my constitutional right to own and possess a firearm, we don't like it, we're living under it. But I can't make them do their job. Matter of fact, it's gotten so bad, we now have lawyers looking at litigation into challenging the 30-day rule that they're not complying with. So I can't make government do its job, and I can't make the governor fund it.
The FOID card, in my opinion, is probably one of the most ridiculous pieces of state fluff I've ever seen. It's $10, and it's good for 10 years, and it asks you a series of 15 or 20 questions, and one question, have you ever been a mental patient or stuff like this? I mean, and then you send it in and get your permit. Now you can buy ammunition, you can buy a gun. I mean, there's no doctor permit, no background check done on it, nothing, zero. They'll run a criminal history on you to see if you've been you're a convicted felon or something. But
and so it was the gun lobby that introduced a resolution to have the Auditor General pull an audit of the Illinois State Police FOID section. And that audit wasn't really flattering to the state police. And now the anti-gun politicians want to use that audit against implementing right to carry. They want to blame us for the backlog of 70,000 applications. They say gun ownership's on the decline. But last month, the state police had a record 61,000 applications for FOID cards.
Before the month of March 2013, there was a record of 70,000 applications and reports of people going up to 5 months without getting their cards.
But they want to wait until the FOID system is perfect. They want to claim that it's a public safety hazard because it's not. Well, I'm here to tell you, if it's a public safety hazard because the FOID card system isn't perfect, it lays at the feet of one person, Governor Pat Quinn. It lays at the feet of his incompetence and fiscal mismanagement of this state, because when the state police went to his office and said, we need more money to hire more bodies, they said no. And when they put their budgets together, did they put more money in there for the state police to get the FOID card system up and running as it should be? No. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. It's not the fault that we won't agree to higher taxes on our fundamental constitutional right. It lays at the incompetence of the governor's office, and that's where the blame should be.
Toby Weisman, a suburban Chicago citizen, was there to tell her state representative, Kelly Cassidy, that she wants the right to defend herself without fear of prosecution.
Who are we going to see?
We're going to go see Representative Kelly Cassidy.
I really don't know. What do you know about Kelly Cassidy's stance on this issue?
She is very much non-supportive of our Second Amendment rights and very much against concealed carry.
So do you know what you're gonna say to her today?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to address with her the fact that I appreciate that she supports my rights as a lesbian and supports my right to marry my wife. But I'd like her to support this other aspect of my life as well. I'm her constituent. My wife is her constituent. We know other people in our area who would like to be able to defend themselves, their families, their homes, and the country if need be. And her stance would not allow us to do that. Representative Cassidy seems like a very nice lady. She does not agree with either concealed carry or, she definitely does not agree with concealed carry. With regard to Second Amendment rights in general, she seems to really focus more on background checks and lost and stolen and lost and found things, kind of, which is fine up to a point. She's very rigid in her views there, and I think that she's one that we'll never win over to our side. I don't actually feel frustrated. I really knew coming down here that that's what I was going to get. But at least I had a chance to speak with her face to face and give her my view, tell her face to face. Because I've written her emails, and I've gotten emails back from her with the same response. But giving it to her face to face, I think, it definitely gives her more to think about.
Weisman says she was able to show Cassidy that not all of her constituents support more gun control. Instead, Representative Cassidy wanted to talk about lost and stolen provisions and other gun control measures.
The anti-gun city folk who've never owned a gun, never shot a gun, don't know anything about firearms except hate. And then it leaves the rural people, which I consider myself one of, that have used firearms safely, responsibly all their life, that have taught, that have trained themselves and other people. And that's a divide that I'm not able to overcome. I don't think the courts will be able to overcome it. The courts will demand some kind of redress, but it certainly won't be what kind of bill that I would write. It'll be something horrible that I'll have to live with.
Even after upwards to 8,000 Illinois citizens from around the state converging on Springfield to push for a carry bill, there's still a few months before the deadline to approve a law, which means there's plenty of time to muddy the waters with issues outside of the right to keep and bear arms.
Okay, so what progress is being made right now on these bills? We've heard rallies from both sides, but I've heard also that, it's time to actually negotiate. Something has to get passed, otherwise the NRA wins.
Oh, no, I think we're making good progress. Let me make sure I turn my phone off. Is that okay? I had that go on there, and I don't want to have that happen.
Any interruptions.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Probably the signs in the back. Signs in the back. We're gonna have anybody?
Anybody gonna go down there? Just see people down there.
We need some people down there too, Deanne. Hi, Mary. How are you? Welcome.
Every time I see you, you have a different image.
That's how they don't find me.
Mark.
Yes.
I said you should just make announcements. Tell
I'm gonna.
people to go down there.
All right. I think we're. Are we on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think we're at capacity up here right now, so I appreciate everybody, but if we can move back, everybody take a step back maybe, and we're going to get started very shortly. My name's Mark Walsh. I am the campaign director for the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence, and it is my esteemed honor, pleasure, to say welcome to Advocacy Day 2013. For those of you who got up early and came from parts all over the state of Illinois, welcome to Springfield.
We pray today that as you have shown us in the past, that you have the capacity to touch the heart of the King We pray that you would touch the heart of every legislator here in this Capitol today. We know that they have the power of the pen to put in some common sense gun legislation. We pray that you would make Illinois a model for the rest of the country as we end this epidemic of senseless violence.
Good afternoon. It's great to see everybody here today. It's so good that you came and turned out. You know, when the other side shows up here, they shut down the building. The streets are closed, right? You got to remember that. We have to remember that.
We brought about 8,000 people down the street and filled 7 city blocks with over 300 buses, people on their own time and their own dime, not school kids, regular, blue-collar, hard-working men and women of the state of Illinois. We filled the streets with them and had a rally. This place here can't even fill up one part of one sidewalk. We filled 8.5 blocks, including an entire convention center. So when they say they're speaking for the people of the state of Illinois, they're certainly not speaking for me. They're certainly not speaking for my gun-owning friends. They're certainly not speaking for the people that I know are true patriots of Illinois, true gun owners, true common sense, hardworking people. We don't have to bring school children in on a school day and try to use them as props for some kind of anti-gun message. That's despicable.
And we demand change because we deserve a future. We deserve a future. We deserve a future.
We deserve a future. We deserve a future. We deserve a future.
Because, as Dr. King said, our lives begin to end when we're silent about things that matter, right? Because this is our time to speak up, right? Speak up if you support universal background checks. Speak up if you want people to report lost and stolen firearms. Speak up if you want to support our children from assault weapons on the streets. Speak up if you think it's too much that somebody has a 50-round ammunition magazine. Look, this is the last unregulated consumer industry in the United States of America. Teddy bears are more regulated than guns. Teddy bears are tested for sharp edges, points, flammability, loose parts. How many children died from teddy bears last year? How many? It's because we took the steps to protect children from unsafe teddy bears. Why can we not do the same with guns?
The federal courts have spoken. In fact, as I speak today, we have 58 days left. 58 days until the state of Illinois has to craft a constitutional concealed carry law. We're the last state in the nation to have it, and the gun owners of the state demand it. You haven't seen any problems with it in the 49 other states that require it.
As this Illinois legislature is being forced by the 7th Circuit Court decision to implement a law to allow the carrying of concealed loaded weapons in public places, we call on lawmakers to use this opportunity to pass the strongest possible gun laws in this country. A law that limits guns in places like schools and stadiums and government buildings and public transportation, for heaven's sake. A law that mandates strong training requirements and for permit holders to have an awfully good cause for being issued one. We must balance the Second Amendment with the rights we have to live in peace and free from fear of another life lost to gun violence.
As they give the same old folks with the same old tired cliches, pastors, crime victims.
And could somebody bring the 2 boxes and set them in front of the steps here? Where's the governor at? Come on, Governor. Come on over here. Come on. All right. Hey, good to see you again, Governor. Just send them right down there, yeah. And the box in front of 50,000 petitions are but a piece of the 95% of Illinois residents that want background checks. 82% who support registering guns, titling guns like cars. These are just a small percentage of what all Illinois wants.
And they just claimed this, 95% of Illinois is on their side. And I thought, you know, if you're going to make up poll numbers, if you're going to just lie outright, why don't you just go all the way and say 100%? Because it's a ludicrous issue. You couldn't find 95% of the people that agree on anything in this day and age, much less to have a poll number that actually says that with any reliability at all that 95% of the people believe in what you're saying. I realize that when you're desperate like the anti-gunners are, they have to fudge the numbers, they have to fudge the poll remarks, they have to cheat, lie to win, but to make such a ludicrous statement that their poll claims that 95% of the Illinois citizens are for more restrictive gun laws is an absolutely ludicrous, laughable statement.
Connecticut responded when their children got killed. Governor, we want the legislators to support you and stand with you and support the children of Illinois and save their lives. Gun legislation. Governor Pat Quinn.
And so it's very important we remember that our duty, and it comes from Scripture, Father, it says that if you save one life, you save the whole world. Right. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to save the whole world.
In his incoherent, rambling speech, he said he was here to save the whole world. I've never heard such lunacy out of a governor that I have to be governed by in the state of Illinois in my entire life. What a ridiculous statement that he is here to save the whole world. He's not doing very well at it.
We're here to save lives. We don't want people being shot down in a movie theater or a church or a political rally in Tucson, Arizona, or going to first grade in Newtown, Connecticut.
I'd like to listen to them because every time they open their mouth, they just prove to me that they put their foot in it. So it's been an education for me today. Hasn't been an iGold rally, that's for sure. I estimated they're crowded about 80 people who they had to bus in from Chicago. But it was worth listening to.
It's a little cold up here now. No. Kidding. Thank you, Governor Quinn. We took a picture of that.
Will be made in the next several weeks, and I look forward to signing bills on my desk that will advance public safety when it comes to guns.
The NRA says they'll get their supporters to vote down any bill that has any add-ons like lost or stolen. What do you say to that if they do have the members there to vote that down? Because this issue is about carrying firearms, not about clip size or what type of firearm it is.
They're entitled to their opinion. I don't think they represent a majority of the people of Illinois by far, and I think it's time for
the state's under a court mandate.
The state's under a court mandate to act on what's called concealed carry legislation. We can have restrictions and limitations. The court acknowledged that, and that's what we're about doing. We don't want to have guns in classrooms or churches or shopping malls or bars and restaurants. That's a prescription for danger and disaster. And so I think we need to work with our legislators who are elected by the people and resist loud groups that don't represent the majority and do what's right for the great majority of everyday people in Illinois. That's where I stand, and I think that's where the people of Illinois want their governor to be out there fighting for public safety. Now, I mentioned a moment ago about high-capacity ammunition magazines. We need to ban those in Illinois, and I think we will get that done. We're going to work very hard on that.
Any talk about clip size or the style of weapon, lever action or semi-auto, all that does is try to take away Second Amendment rights from people that have never violated the law in their life. They will not crack down on the gangs. They will not crack down on the drug dealers. They will not reform their courts.
Should a ban on high-capacity magazines and assault weapons be included in a concealed carry bill, or should it be done separately?
Well, I think the way it's looking now is there'll probably be a concealed carry bill, and then there'll be another bill separate that will deal with some of these other public safety measures. But I'll leave that up to the legislature. If the legislature decides a different course, they're the legislative branch, and we'll listen to them carefully. The bottom line is not so much how it's done, but to get it done. We've got to get a lot of these reforms done this year by May 31st on my desk, and I think that's an important step.
They believe they're in the right. Of course, they're mistaken. They believed they were in the right when they banned handguns in Chicago, which was overturned by the federal courts, the U.S. Supreme Court, 2 times, and they still try to cling to their forgotten, wrong-headed ways. But gosh love them.
The legislature needs to get some significant reforms adopted into law or into bill form that come to my desk beyond just concealed carry. That's not enough. I think there should be limitations on concealed carry. Said that from the outset. But I also think there's other things that need to be done, and they better get them done.
The police officers of the 30s and 40s, they carried a 6-shot revolver. It's typified by this Smith & Wesson revolver here. 6 shots in a cylinder that goes around. This type of firearm was invented by Sam Cole shortly before the Civil War in about 1860. Now this gun is still manufactured, it's still used, I still recommend it, and I still shoot revolver. Everybody now wants to shoot the semi-autos. I have no idea why. They're nice guns, they're well designed. I'm still a traditionalist. They call this a wheel gun. Nobody wants to shoot a wheel gun anymore. They all want to shoot the big semi-autos. So this was the gun of the police officers in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. It was brilliantly typified by 2 manufacturers, Colt, which I have several of, and Smith & Wesson, which is typified by this one here. And it had 6 shots. So after you shot 6 times, bang, 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 you were out. You had to dump the empties into your hand, throw them on the ground, then you had to reach into your pocket for 6 more rounds. You dumped them out into your hand, then you had to put those in these little holes one at a time. That took you forever. Then you closed the cylinder and you had 6 more rounds. Well, the police come to find out if there was more than one criminal or if he had more than one firearm and you shot your 6 rounds, by the time you started to reload, he killed you because he had what they called more firepower. That happened in the famous Newhall case, which I won't go into. It happened in several other states where the police officers were what they called outgunned by the criminal.
We should level the playing field. We should be on the same playing field as the criminal. If the criminal can carry a gun, why can't we protect ourselves? What good's a ball bat going to do or something? I mean, we need to be able to have the same protection that a criminal has.
Law enforcement agency from the East Coast to the West Coast, north to south, have all gone with the auto pistol. When you shoot this firearm, its cartridges are contained in a magazine. Some people call it a clip. The cartridges are contained in a clip which fits into the buttstock of the firearm. So you fire. Now this magazine holds 15 rounds. So you're automatically more than almost triple what the revolver held. Right off the bat, you have a first load is 15 rounds instead of 6. And when you start making that comparison, you realize that 6 rounds for a police officer is not really that many. So they went with the auto pistol, and after you shoot those 15 rounds, your firearm will open like this on an empty magazine, where you drop out the magazine, let it fall to the ground, you reach onto your pouch, and you have another loaded magazine that you put into the pistol, drop the slide, and now you're instantly reloaded. It takes about 2 seconds if you're practiced, about a half a second if you're world class. So, but you reload instantaneously, and you're back in the firefight, you're back fighting crime, you're back fighting the criminal, when you're not outgunned, and you're certainly not caught with an empty gun. The worst thing in a gunfight, I guess there's 2 things. One is not to have a gun, and the other one is to have an empty gun. So that's the only way you win gunfights, is with a loaded gun. So all the police agencies have now changed over to the semi-automatic pistol, which is great for the police, and the civilian shooting market has followed as well. But what the problem is all the crooks, all the con men, all the bank robbers, all the gangbangers have all gone over to more sophisticated firearms. So instead of being a force for good, a force for law-abiding, a force for law enforcement, they're a force for evil. They're a force for felony, a force for destruction. This gun was designed in the 1930s. It's a classic. It has a telescopic sight, which some of the anti-gun liberals call a sniper rifle. But this is your quintessential bolt-action, 4-round, telescopically sighted, 30-06 or above caliber hunting rifle. You could hunt deer, you could hunt bear, you could hunt antelope, you could hunt small game pests and varmints. It would be very powerful on them, but you could hunt all the way down to rabbit or squirrel-sized animals if you want to. Coyote, fox, just about any game animal in North America can be taken with the 30-06. And this is what's used by what they call the traditional hunting rifle. Very finely made, handcrafted, fine wood, fine cut checkering. And this epitomizes auto-loading rifle. This is our current military firearm. This is a civilian version of the M16. It's a semi-automatic action. It taps gas off the barrel to load the action for every shot. Self-loading, but only one shot for each pull of the trigger. and its cartridges are contained in a magazine, sometimes called a clip, which inserts into this well of the rifle, and it fires one shot every time you pull the trigger until this magazine is empty, where you push that little button. This magazine comes out, another loaded magazine is inserted, and the rifle can be fired again, and that's repeated over and over for how much ammunition you have. This is pretty much the standard of what our Marines, Army, Navy are issued for military. This is their rifle, except for one big difference. Their rifle has a switch that goes on to auto. This only goes safe and semi-auto. This doesn't have the turn-on switch, which if you pull the trigger on full auto, this rifle would continuously shoot until the magazine is empty. This rifle does not do that. No civilian firearm does that. It's the difference between full auto and semi-auto. This is a semi-auto rifle, but it takes the same magazines, has the same sight radius, it shoots the same cartridge. Everything else is the same, except for that one major difference between military firearm and civilian firearm.
Military assault weapons should be in the hands of the military. And if you need a 100-round clip to put in your military weapon to go out and shoot a deer, maybe you ought to stick to fishing.
Everybody wants to preserve the right of people that want to use guns for sport, hunting, or target practice to have the right to do so. But that doesn't mean you have an assault weapon.
Come on. Don't need that for duck hunting. Well, it's not for duck hunting. So when foreign bankers take over and want to rape us collectively.
This firearm here is older than I am. This gun is 62 years old. The gun would still sell, would still buy, still has desirable collector interest, and it's still a perfectly functional self-defense or target shooting pistol. So that's another deal. Guns last for 100 years. So that's why you see the secondary market, you see the buying and selling market. In fact, the firearms, these guns would outlast me. These guns outlasted my father, could outlast my grandfather. Guns last a long time. So where were we now? We talked about the transition from revolver to auto pistol. We talked about the transition from bolt-action rifle to semi-auto rifle. We'll talk about the only other type of firearm that's out there, and that's a pump-action shotgun. It carries the shells in a magazine underneath the barrel, and it's operated by pushing this lever back and forth. And that little sound that you just heard, the racking of the action of an 870 shotgun, it's called the ultimate fight stopper. It's called the ultimate pucker factor. It's called the ultimate, where the police do that, everybody freezes, nobody moves, everybody stops all their criminal activity because they realize, oh my gosh, he's got a shotgun. I've watched all the debates, I've watched all the laws come and go, I've watched major bans and restrictions come and go, I've seen all kinds of politicians come and go, watched a lot of them go to prison. And of course, now the other thing that was used by the shooter, which again is a criminal, and I hate to dwell on criminals, but they seem to be the drivers of new legislation. The criminal that tried to assassinate Gabby Giffords in Arizona did not have a standard capacity magazine for his Glock handgun of 15 rounds. He had what's called an extra length capacity, and this is the 33 round magazine. So you see that you've now more than doubled your firepower. This is an enthusiast gun. It's a professional grade gun. If guys just want to practice at the range and they just want to stand there and shoot 33 rounds without having to reload, this is their magazine of choice. Unfortunately, the criminals and the gangbangers have glommed onto this to say, well, I want the most firepower I can have to further my criminal career. So the law-abiding guy gets caught up in this desire now to ban, they call this a high-capacity magazine.
100-round magazine clip. Why in the world does anyone other than someone in the military need that? I don't see a legitimate sporting or hunting purpose to an assault rifle or to a 100-round clip.
What is the downside of saying you can have clips with only 10 rounds in it? What does that violate? Hunting? Sportsmanship? If you need more than 10 rounds to hunt, and some argue they hunt with that many rounds, you shouldn't be out there hunting. You can't get the deer in 3 shots. You shouldn't be hunting. You're an embarrassment.
I can't get into that political debate because we'd be here all day, but that's the magazine that fits this pistol. It could take either one. In fact, this pistol could take a magazine that only holds 7 rounds. So I don't know what you're wanting to call full capacity or high capacity or extra capacity. All I know is that automatic pistols take a detachable magazine. I guess conceivably, if you wanted to go through the hassle, you could make a magazine that was, this long. I guess you could make a 200-round magazine. I don't know. It would weigh 25 pounds. It would be impossible to carry around. It would be impossible to shoot with. It changes the dynamics of your gun. It changes the concealability of your gun. You could not conceal a gun with such a 3-foot magazine as easily as you could this pistol here, which is eminently practical, eminently concealable, and eminently used by all kinds of law-abiding people. So with a magazine that sticks out that far, that's clearly, it's an issue that I can't solve right here today. But that's,
to reset, Illinois doesn't even let citizens do in public what Tom is doing in the comfort of his well-armed basement. Illinois has a ban on carrying concealed firearms outside of the home.
I don't see a legitimate sporting or hunting purpose to an assault rifle or to a 100-round clip. I just don't see it.
Does the Second Amendment have anything to do with hunting?
Of course it does, and read the opinion. And the U.S. Supreme Court was clear in their opinion. Congress still retains the right to monitor and to regulate Second Amendment usage.
The Second Amendment, what's your understanding of it? Because we always hear hunting and sportsmanship and all this stuff. In your opinion, what does the Second Amendment stand for?
I think it stands for the individual right to keep and bear arms.
For what reason?
I think it will, for what reason?
You have a right to use your own skills and ability to defend yourself.
I think it was there to put in a check to protect the other rights that we have. I think it was put there to make sure that, you know, the people always have the means to defend our nation.
It's pretty simple, and I think they wrote it that way for a reason. It gives citizens the right to protect themselves and own firearms.
You know, we don't live in a state where it's lords and serfs. That's not what it is. And we're not going to have political hacks making decisions about whether or not, you know, people have the right to defend themselves.
So that's what we're left with. The Second Amendment and our founding fathers who threw off a tyrant who tried to disarm them so that he could govern them horribly, control them and enslave them. They said, we're going to keep our firearms because that keeps us free. It gives us a forceful means. Like Mao said, power flows from the barrel of a gun. He's absolutely correct. It certainly does. Whether it flows for good or evil depends on the owner. But the Second Amendment was enshrined in our country's founding document to say, you can, if you don't mess up and you obey our laws, you can have a firearm. And you can use it to defend yourself, to get food on the table, for pleasurable pastime, whatever you desire. That's your right as an American citizen, along with the right to a jury trial, the right to a lawyer, the right to free speech, the right to talk about, you know, that your government is messing up. Those rights are fundamental.
It's pretty broad. Now, they did limit it. I mean, I don't think you can own a bazooka or a Sherman tank. But, of course, rifles, shotguns, things of this nature, you know, any handgun, doesn't matter the capacity of the clip. And that's pretty much my definition.
Lawmakers eventually passed a concealed carry bill that requires more than a dozen hours of classes plus a fee every 5 years. As for the non-issues, the court's deadline came before the politicians could line up support for more background checks and bans on certain types of weapons. After decades of denying citizens the right to keep and bear arms, Illinois passed concealed carry legislation, and in the spring of 2014, the first concealed carry permits were delivered. But there were still unresolved issues about where someone could carry. Illinois is still very much a gun-free zone.
Tell me what the imagery is of seeing, you know, it's one thing to have a rally and then go lobby your lawmakers, but why march 7 blocks through the capital city?
Well, it's part of the American right. It's a constitutional right to gather publicly and to address your grievances with your legislators, and combining the two in a orderly, peaceful, demonstrative fashion is something that we still have the right to do today.
Along the way, the Illinois State Rifle Association Secretary Tom Burkhalter was the progenitor of these signs and progenitor of counter demonstrations down in Daly Center Plaza. And once Tom passed from cancer in the late 90s, I assumed the duties, inherited the signs, and organized the demonstrations down in the belly of the beast Daily Center Plaza, Chicago, Illinois. And along the years, it's just sort of morphed into this.
And we would have thousands of people show up at the Prairie Capital Convention Center. Second Amendment supporters, they are constitutional supporters. So we have Republicans, Democrats, we have conservatives, liberals, you know, from all extremes, you know, and down the center. One year I think we had 8,000 to 9,000 the year that we were trying to finally push the law over the goal line.
Now, I'm a firm believer in the ballot box and political activism, and this is where I see, the battleground. In 2008, we had a real turnout because we started using the buses, and I looked at these pictures, and what were these people? What was their message? What were they there for? I got to get these things back out there, and did. And then the 2009 pictures, it's like, oh, okay, that's it. And it does this old warrior's heart good when you see 5,000 to 8,000 people marching down the street, and then they all start chanting in the Capitol Rotunda, "Concealed carry now." They had that building roar.
First, we'll talk about the crowd being downsized. That was one of the other things that the Missouri group told us, that once, don't be surprised. You'll build a groundswell of support, and then after the law passes, then your numbers will, just don't be disappointed by that, because that's just a common thing that has happened in every state, because the pressure is off. Yes, right, regardless of the issue, once you get the law passed. So we knew going into iGold 2014 that our numbers would be somewhat lower.
The numbers were down, but that didn't keep thousands of activists who have fought for years from getting together for a celebration.
I mean, I've had 3 mugging attempts, so I can't go into details, but the statute of limitations is well expired for all of them. And I did not like the feeling of what was happening. I could see it coming, and I didn't like the fact that I couldn't go to the police for help, that I had to rely on myself at the time.
My name is T.D. Rowe. I am a firearms instructor, and I am a sponsored competitive action pistol shooter. When I was a teenager, my sister and I were attacked, and at that age, I couldn't have a firearm. But if the same thing happened at this age, it would end differently, and I would be able to defend myself.
I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And that's basically what concealed carry is. It's the ultimate last resort when the bad guy is going to do you a permanent disabling injury or kill you. And you've got to be able to say no. We have ostracized in the metropolitan area firearm owners and people of a self-defense bent. And the pendulum has swung too far, putting the advantage to those who would rather use force against another person rather than reason. And when reason fails, you need the universal translator that says one word, no. Says it clearly, with no doubt. Back off, no.
After having been successful in getting the right to carry concealed, the 2014 Illinois Gun Owners Lobby Day was a very joyous event.
Otis McDonald, I love you. Mary Shepard, I love you. Todd Vandermyde, I love you. Rich Pearson, I love you. Jim and Noble, I love you. Mike, Valinda Rowe, I love you. And everybody, I love you.
Last night, right around the corner from here is a little place called Saputo's. And a bunch of us got together last night. I got to eat in the safest restaurant in Springfield. Just so happens, I think there are about 15 guns between the 2 tables that nobody saw. I don't know how it made some of the city guys who were in there having dinner feel that night, but I know how it felt for me.
Ladies and gentlemen, at one time, the fee was going to be $1,000 a year. We got it down to $150 for 5 years. That's $30 a year for 5 years. To me, that is a cheap price to be able to protect yourself and your family. Hours. A lot of you have expressed to me, think the hours are too much. I agree with you. But at one time, it was going to be over 40 hours. We got it down to 16 with 8 for veterans, 4 for Utah, 4 for hunter safety.
Some of the gains that we've made, it's not a perfect bill. Some people might not even say it's a great bill. But let's look at what the other side lost last year. They lost on the issue of preemption when it comes to transporting firearms anywhere in the state. They can no longer create absurd and arcane type of rules that you have to break down the gun and it can't be anywhere close to you in your vehicle and it has to be in a case and all those other things. We got preemption for a number of issues, the first one being transportation.
One of the places that families need most in Chicago is mass transportation and the city parks. They need to be able to carry there. Going to and from public gatherings, the library, museums, going to and from the parking lots from all those restricted places. We have legislators who want to roll the tide back and take the freedom of choice away from our churches. Mary Shepard, our friend and loved one, Mary Shepard, beaten and left for dead in her church by a paroled felon. She went to court. She won her right back to protect herself in that situation. And now, Senator Dan Kotowski wants to strip her of that right all over again and ban concealed carry in churches. If you get a chance today, after you visit your own legislator, feel free to drop a note or stop by Senator Dan Kotowski's office and say, your churches already have the right to ban carry if they want to. Stay out of our district.
Reciprocity, I've got Utah myself. I can't wait. We're going to keep fighting for that. Yes, and there's too many restrictions. But sometimes you got to crawl before you can walk. For the first time in 60 years, a Chicago resident no longer has to go down to City Hall and register any of their firearms. The work that Otis McDonald, David, and Colleen Lawson started in that lawsuit, we finished with a piece of legislation that said they cannot regulate handguns. Not that they can't say something about, they cannot regulate, register handguns, their ammunition, and it is an exclusive jurisdiction of the state. And that stung.
The victories gun rights activists and Second Amendment supporters achieved didn't take away from the irrational arguments that were made for years by the state in defense of their unconstitutional infringement on the right to keep and bear arms.
On the Illinois State Police website for a decade, because I had been complaining about it, I think, since 2004. I don't have a screenshot from back then to prove it, but I think 2004, 2005 is when I sent my first letter to the director of the state police and complained about this webpage they had up on women who are faced with a sexual assault or physical assault and how they should protect themselves. And it advised women to carry either a rat tail comb, which they're kind of hard to find anymore, but it's a comb with a long spike on the end of it. And they're plastic, a plastic comb. And the other thing was to, like, a nail file or a car key to protect themselves with. And then they would go on to say that if that didn't work, you know, to stop an assault, that we could gag ourselves into throwing up, and that would, I guess, make ourselves unattractive to the attacker or whatever. So,
for those of you that have been to IGO before, you may recognize what these are. My tactical rat tail comb self-defense tool and my tactical self-defense tongue depressor.
I had gotten my concealed carry license the day before in the mail. So then I held it up and I said, I've traded these for my concealed carry license and a 9mm.
I traded them in for my Illinois concealed carry license and a 9mm.
Even though iGold 2014 was a celebration, there were still concerns among gun rights supporters, particularly the areas people were restricted from carrying, or so-called gun-free zones.
Where we draw imaginary circles around ourselves and pretend like violent criminals and the criminally and violent insane cannot get in there and hurt good, innocent people. They are those zones, the very same individuals choose and select to commit their murder and their mayhem and their destruction because they know in those zones they will face the least resistance of any place in this state. Gun-free zones are killing zones. And the sooner our legislators, Speaker Madigan, President of the Senate John Collerton, understand that, the sooner we can put the right definition on shall not be infringed. At 3 p.m. today, we're going to do something different. We've never done this before, but we're going to rally in the rotunda on the first floor at 3 p.m. We want as many of you to come back to the rotunda at that time for 1 full minute. Long enough to get the message across, not long enough to get thrown out. Okay? All right. So, I want to practice through that. I want you to join with me. Gun-free zones are killing zones. Gun-free zones are killing zones. You've got it. That's beautiful. 3 o'clock in the rotunda. Meet me there.
And now the focus is more towards holding the ground we've taken, not backsliding. You could call them the antis. They're madder than a nest of hornets being hit about this. You can see that with some of the bills they've introduced. So now the theme is no backsliding and to start working away at all the concealed carry restricted places.
Standing tall and looking good. Standing tall and looking good. We should be in Hollywood. We should be in Hollywood.
We've got the 23 categories of gun-free zones. That's a major issue. Mass transportation being one of those. People who have no other means of travel other than mass transportation cannot protect themselves very easily going to and from on mass transportation.
Gun-free zones are killing zones. Are killing zones. Gun-free zones. Gun-free zones are killing zones. Are killing zones. Gun-free zones. Gun-free zones are killing zones. Are killing zones.
It could be subways, it's the L, it's the Chicago Transit, the buses in Chicago, the trains, that sort of thing. I don't know if they have it in your area of the state, but in Southern Illinois, we have the Rides Mass Transportation for our elderly and our handicapped who don't drive. That is their public transportation. And so, they would be limited there. The 16 hours that's 2 days. If you have someone who lives in the inner city that has to travel outside the city to get their training, that is a huge detriment to them. It disenfranchises them. They're not going to be able to exercise that right to get out of the city or wherever they have to go for 2 days to get the training, pay for that training, and then pay the $150 for the license. So there needs to be provisions in there for those issues. March down the street, down Capitol Avenue to the Capitol to go in and talk to our legislators, and we rallied at the rotunda there. There were hundreds, thousands of us there crowded into the wings off of the rotunda and around the rotunda. And we felt like it was important to get the message out to everybody in that building that gun-free zones are killing zones.
To Speaker Madigan, to President of the Senate John Collerton, to Governor Quinn. And that message is that gun-free zones are killing zones.
Gun-free zones, were posted with the red, white, and black signs.
And that's what they are. That's the way we see them. They're not safe zones. They are killing zones that are an invitation to someone who is intent on creating mayhem and murder. This is the place to go do it.
I'm not exactly sure which state it is, but there's only 3. And they include prisons and mental hospitals where, people, weapons are strictly controlled.
The 23 categories of prohibited places that we cannot carry. We cannot protect ourselves in 23 categories of places. playgrounds, zoos, museums, libraries, just there's a whole long list. And I think we all think it's too prohibitive in where we can carry and where we can't. Mass transportation is a huge one. And what we call these are gun-free zones.
They are those fantasy lands where we draw imaginary circles around ourselves and around our children, and we pretend that violent criminals and the criminally insane can't come in and do harm. They are the zones those very same individuals select. They choose, they target, they pick, they plan on going into those areas to create their mayhem, their death and destruction, because they know in a gun-free zone, they're going to find the least resistance of any place where they would go to commit a crime. Gun-free zones are killing zones. Gun-free zones are killing zones. Gun-free zones are killing zones.
We chanted that together for 1 full minute to ensure that everyone would hear us, that the message would get out, and that just because a law is passed, we're not going away. This is a major issue that has to be resolved. And just to let them know, just because they passed the law, it's not all done. We're still here, we're still fighting, and we want you to hear us. And I think we were successful that day.
Gun-free zones are killing zones. 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 Gun-free zones are killing zones.
To keep and bear to carry a firearm. So far, we're making good progress on that. But the Second Amendment has a final clause in it that says shall not be infringed. And so we've entered that new era. We have the right to keep, we have the right to bear, but we're still infringed. So we're entering into the era where we're going to define and shape shall not be infringed. And a lot of these issues that we've talked about, the required 16 hours of training, the high licensing fee, the restricted areas, the 23 categories of places we can't carry, those are infringements. We're not done. A big chunk of the battle, we've gained great ground, but we're not there yet because of the shall not be infringed.
States recognize that self-defense is a basic human right.
48 states respect a woman's right to carry a firearm to protect herself against violent crime.
2 states do not recognize our right to self-defense. One of those states, Illinois.
Instead of carrying a firearm for self-defense, the Illinois State Police advise women to carry a comb, nail file, or key to ward off an attacker. Demand your right to protect yourself with more than a comb, a nail file, or a key. Wondering what self-defense tool this is? Illinois State Police suggest women who fall victim to sexual assault.
I feel like we've crossed that Rubicon a long time ago, right? We have
nuclear weapons in this world, and thank God citizens don't have them. Thank God they're not immature. The sophistication of weaponry and force available to militaries, for better or for worse, is well beyond what is available, or in my view, we should ever contemplate making available to private citizens.